The toast was halfway to his mouth when his phone lit up on the table. Not a text. Not a friend. The screen said lender. He kept smiling anyway. He held his glass up like nothing changed, like he didn't see the glow washing over his knuckles. Around him, his friends were still talking over each other, laughing too loud in a booth that was too small. "Free man," someone said. A fork clinked against a plate. Our server leaned in to refill waters and had to pull back when my husband's phone buzzed again. Same name, same number. The vibration walked the phone a half-inch across the polished wood. He flipped it face down with 2 fingers, quick, like a magician. Then he raised his glass higher. "All right," he said, The phone buzzed again. This time it kept buzzing, like it wasn't going to stop until he touched it. A couple people laughed, the way you laugh when you're not sure if something's a joke. Then the sound died. One by one, they noticed. The glow leaking from under the phone. The way his jaw tightened while he kept his grin pinned in place. "Work?" his friend asked. He said it with a smirk, like it was harmless. My husband didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He slid the phone into his hand under the table and stood up. "I'll be right back," he said, already stepping out of the booth. His chair scraped the floor. It was loud in the pause that followed. The server stopped mid-step with a pitcher in her hand, then kept moving like she'd decided not to acknowledge it. I stayed where I was. I rested my palms on my napkin and pressed it flat, corner to corner, because it was something to do. Across the table, one of his buddies lifted his eyebrows at me. The look said, "So, what's that about?" I didn't answer. I reached for my water and took a small sip. Someone tried to restart the energy. "Hey, it's done," another friend said, raising their glass again. "It's official now." They were careful with their words. Official, done. Nobody said my name, nobody said divorce, but the word sat there anyway, between the basket of fries and the sweating glasses. My husband had wanted this dinner. He'd picked the place. He'd told everyone the date as soon as the court portal updated. He'd taken a screenshot of the line that said final and sent it to a group chat with a single message. Finally. Now he was gone, wedged by the bathroom hallway near the host stand where the music was thinner. I could see him through the gap between shoulders and hanging coats. His back was to us. His head was slightly bowed like he was listening to something he didn't like. He answered the call on the 3rd ring. I watched his thumb move, watched his shoulder tense. He spoke low. I couldn't hear words over the restaurant noise, but I could see the rhythm of it. Short sentence. Pause. Another short sentence. Then his free hand came up, palm open, as if he was trying to push the air back where it came from. The friend closest to me leaned sideways, craning. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Her tone was still light, but she'd stopped chewing. Her fork hovered. I kept my eyes on the table, my husband's empty seat, the condensation ring where his glass had been. "He'll say it's fine," I said. It came out quiet, not bitter, just plain. A few people laughed again, softer this time, like the laugh was for protection. The server dropped the check presenter near the edge of the table without making it a moment. Black leather, a pen tucked into the fold. My husband always grabbed the check fast, like it was part of being seen as the guy in charge. Tonight the pen sat untouched. Another buzz cut through. His phone this time, not on the table. It was in his hand by the hallway. The screen flashed bright enough that I saw the preview line even from where I sat. Urgent. Past due. He read it. I saw his mouth move, almost like he was sounding the words out without meaning to. He turned slightly, like he was about to look back at the table. He didn't. Instead, he walked farther down the hall, away from the host stand, away from anyone who might overhear. At the booth, the conversation didn't come back. People stared at their drinks. Someone traced the edge of their coaster with a fingernail. The music kept playing like it hadn't noticed the shift. In my bag, under my wallet and my keys, there was a thick manila envelope I hadn't thrown away yet. It had a white shipping label stuck across the front, a barcode, black lines on bright paper. I'd meant to deal with it later. I touched the edge of it through the fabric, just to confirm it was still there. Across from me, my husband's friend cleared his throat. "You think it's about the house?" he asked. He said house like it was a prize, like it couldn't have teeth. I didn't answer. I watched the hallway. My husband's voice rose for the first time, not loud, but sharper. One sentence. Then he dropped it back down again. His shoulders went rigid. He ended the call with a tap and stared at the screen like it might change if he waited. Then his phone rang again immediately. He didn't pick it up. He stood there, eyes fixed on that glowing rectangle, while the celebration behind him sat frozen in polite silence, waiting for him to decide what story he was going to bring back to the table. 2 weeks earlier, he made time into a weapon. It started with an email that hit my inbox at 9:07 a.m. on a Tuesday, one of those mornings where the light looks clean and honest, like nothing bad ever happens before noon. Subject: Settlement packet signature required today. His attorney wrote like she was scheduling a dentist appointment. Per Mr. Hale's request, this matter must be finalized today. If executed documents are not returned by 5 p.m., we will proceed with filing tomorrow morning. There was a PDF attached. 48 pages. Gray signature tabs on the right side like little flags telling me where my life was supposed to end. I read it standing at the kitchen counter because sitting down felt like agreeing. Behind me, he opened and closed cabinets too hard. He wasn't yelling. He didn't have to. He just made noise the way some people make weather constant enough that you stop expecting calm. "Did you see it?" he asked. I saw it. "Then sign it." I kept scrolling, thumb dragging the page down in slow, careful swipes. House, retirement, vehicles. A list of things I'd helped keep afloat in the quiet ways that don't show up in court filings. At the top of the assets section, the house was written like a trophy. Marital residence awarded to respondent. Beneath it, in smaller lines that didn't get bolded or celebrated, the numbers sat there like they'd always been there. Balance. Fees. Past due amount. I didn't say any of it out loud. Not yet. He leaned over my shoulder and tapped the screen where the signature lines were. "You don't want anything," he said, like he was quoting me, like he'd been practicing. I didn't correct him. That was the first time he looked confused, just a flicker, because I'd always corrected him before. I'd always tried to make him say it right, to make him say it fair. But the email had a deadline, and deadlines don't care about fairness. On the second page, his attorney had included a neat paragraph about mediation availability. I could tell because it was underlined like an invitation. The last available slot for same-day execution is 3:30 p.m. with a notary present. My phone buzzed on the counter, and I didn't even have to pick it up to know what it was. A calendar invite, already accepted, already stamped into my day. Notary. 3:30 p.m. Address. A strip mall office park, 10 minutes from my job. Note, bring government-issued photo ID. No late arrivals. He had added it the night before. I could see the timestamp if I opened the details created at 11:46 p.m. while I was asleep. He'd planned my signature like an appointment. "You scheduled it," I said, still watching the PDF. "Because you stall," he said, "and I'm not doing this for months. Sign and we're done." Done. Like it was a switch. He crossed the kitchen and slid his phone toward me so I'd see the invite again, the little red dot on the calendar, the address pinned in a map preview like there was nowhere else I could be. Then he did the thing he always did when he wanted me to feel small. He acted calm. "You can start over," he said. "I'm taking the house. You'll be free." Free. Like the house was a gift instead of a weight. I asked one question anyway, because some habits are hard to kill. "What about the mortgage?" His eyes didn't move. "It's in my name now," he said. "That's the point." He said it like paper was magic, like ink could lift a burden off a structure built out of wood and debt. I watched him for a moment, looking for the crack where truth would slip out. But he didn't give it to me. He just waited, arms folded, making the clock louder by pretending it wasn't there. So I did what he didn't expect. I opened the junk drawer and took out a roll of tape and a stack of small boxes. I started packing my things in pieces that wouldn't look dramatic. My grandmother's mug, a set of measuring spoons, the framed photo that always tilted because the back stand was broken. I didn't take the TV. I didn't take furniture. I took the kinds of things you can lose without anyone noticing until later. He followed me down the hallway. "You're really just going to leave?" he asked. "I'm going to meet the notary," I said. That answer pleased him. He exhaled like he'd won an argument we hadn't actually had. As I moved from room to room, my phone kept lighting up with reminders: the attorney email, the calendar ping, the little push notification that said, "Event starts in 4 hours." I put the phone face down on the counter. I printed the packet because he liked paper. He liked the sound of it, the weight of it. He liked how it looked when you stacked a life into a neat, threatening pile. On the cover letter, there was a tracking barcode at the top, black lines on white, because even the delivery system needed proof that something had been handed over. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen and watched me staple pages together. "I'm not paying for a fight," he said. "If you make this ugly, I'll make it uglier." There it was, the real deadline. Not 5 p.m., the deadline where he turned my name into a problem on paper. I didn't give him anything to work with. I slid the packet into a plain folder. I set my ID on top. I took my keys, one small box, and my purse. At 3:12 p.m., my phone buzzed again. "Notary, 18 minutes." He walked behind me to the front door like an escort. "See?" he said, soft now. "We're almost done." I stepped onto the porch and felt the air hit my face like a clean reset I didn't trust. Then I looked down at the calendar invite one last time, the address, the suite number, the line that mattered most. No late arrivals. And I understood what he'd really built for me. A room, a pen, a clock, a morning after appointment where my signature would make his story official. The notary office was wedged between a tax place and a salon that smelled like sweet chemical flowers. A laminated sign on the glass door said "Appointments Only." Under it, in smaller print, "No legal advice given." Inside, everything was beige on purpose. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige chairs, lined up like they were waiting for someone to behave. A little end table held a clipboard with a sign-in sheet and a pen attached to a chain. I wrote my name in neat block letters. Date. Time. The pen was light, cheap, and already half out of ink. My husband stood behind me like a chaperone. He didn't touch my shoulder. He didn't have to. His presence did the job. "You're early," he said, checking his watch like we were boarding a flight. At 3:29, the inner door opened, and the notary stepped out with a folder hugged to her chest. She was the kind of professional who keeps her voice steady no matter what story walks in. "Mr. Hale?" she asked. He lifted his chin. "That's me." She looked at me. "And you are?" I gave my name. She nodded without curiosity, like names were just boxes that needed to be checked. "IDs, please." End quote. We handed them over at the same time. She compared photos to faces, faces to paper. When she gave mine back, her eyes lingered a beat on my birth date, then moved on. No judgment, no sympathy. Just procedure. "Okay," she said. "We'll do this in the conference room." Conference room was generous. It was a small square space with a table that had seen a lot of paperwork and not a lot of meals. 2 chairs, one on each side. A third pushed against the wall like a backup witness. She placed the packet down between us. Thick, clean, flagged with gray tabs that said "Initial" in capital letters. My husband's attorney had labeled everything. It looked organized enough to feel safe. The notary flipped to the first page. "I'm going to confirm identities, then witness signatures. I can't answer questions about the terms. If you have questions, you should speak to your attorneys." My husband smiled like she'd just said something flattering. I kept my hands on my lap until she slid the first page toward me. "Initial here," she said, tapping the tab. The pen she offered was heavier than the lobby pen, smooth black barrel. It clicked when I pressed it. That click sounded loud in the small room. I initialed. He watched my hand move like he needed proof I was still under control. Page 2. Another initial. Page 3. Another. My signature started to feel like a machine. My name, in the same curve, over and over again, while the clock on the wall ticked in clean, indifferent seconds. Halfway through, my husband leaned back in his chair and exhaled like he was finally breathing again. "See?" he said to nobody. "Easy." The notary didn't respond. She just turned the next page. The settlement worksheet was tucked in like a summary for people who didn't want to read the full story. Marital residence awarded to respondent. Petitioner waives all interest and claim. Respondent. Petitioner. Words that made people sound like roles instead of lives. My husband pointed at the line that gave him the house. "Right there," he said, almost gleeful. "That's what I'm talking about." He said it like it was a clean win, like houses were just addresses. The notary cleared her throat, not disapproving, just reminding us she was in the room. "Please refrain from directing each other," she said. "I need this to stay orderly." "I'm 7. My husband lifted both hands in a mock surrender. "Of course, orderly." That was his favorite kind of ending. I kept reading the small print anyway, because that's how I'd survived our marriage, by reading what he wanted to skim. There were lines under the house section that didn't have bold headers, just numbers and conditions. A payoff window. A deadline. Fees listed like afterthoughts. I didn't ask. Not because I didn't understand, because I did. He had rushed this so hard for a reason, and whatever was attached to that address was going to attach itself to the name on the paperwork. The system didn't care who made coffee there, or patched drywall, or stayed up late calling the lender. The system cared about who signed. The notary turned another page. "Sign here. Full signature." I signed. My husband signed with a flourish. He added a tiny underline under his name like he was autographing a book. The notary stamped and pressed. Stamped and pressed. Each stamp made a soft, final thump against the paper. She opened a thick journal black cover, tight binding, and wrote in it with careful strokes: date, document type, number of pages, our names, a note about the IDs she'd verified. She slid the journal toward us. "Please sign the notary log." My husband signed first, big letters, impatient. Then he pushed it toward me like passing a bill. I signed smaller, cleaner, like I didn't want to leave extra ink behind. When the last page was done, the notary stacked everything into a perfect pile and aligned the corners with the edge of the table. She clipped the packet shut. "You'll receive copies from your attorneys," she said. "That's all." My husband stood up fast, relief already pouring into his posture. He was smiling again, the same smile he wore at parties when he wanted people to think he was generous. "Thank you," he said, and meant, "Thank you for watching her comply." Outside, in the hallway, he pulled his phone out as if it was the final step. He opened the camera and took a picture of the signed signature page. Then, he opened his email and forwarded it with one thumb. I watched the little sending icon spin. "You're done," he said, like he was giving me permission to exist again. "I'm filing tonight. Tomorrow morning it's in." He said in like it was a door locking. On the way to the car, my phone buzzed, not a call, not a demand. A system notification. E-filing portal. Document received. Just received. Not accepted yet. Still moving through the machine. My husband glanced at my screen and smirked like he'd already won the next step. I didn't correct him. I just stared at the words, "Document received," and listened to the quiet hum of the office park behind us, people coming and going, stamps hitting paper, lives being reduced to checkboxes until my phone buzzed again. A new line appeared under the first. Status. Processing. The next morning, my phone buzzed before my alarm. Not him. Not a friend. A plain system email with no personality. E-filing portal. Accepted. Filed. Case no. A string of numbers that didn't look like anything I'd ever built with my hands. Status. Final judgment entered. There was a timestamp. There was an attachment. There was a feeling in my chest like a door shutting in a building I didn't own. From the other side of the bedroom, my husband made a satisfied sound in his sleep, an exhale that wasn't mine to interpret anymore. In the kitchen, I set my phone face down on the counter and made coffee the way I always had. Muscle memory. The same scoop. The same tap of the filter basket. The same quiet, waiting for something hot to happen. When he came in, he didn't say good morning. He said, "It's filed." He held his phone out like a trophy. The court portal screenshot filled the screen, bright and clean. Einl. He'd circled it in red with his finger, like he could leave fingerprints on pixels. "Told you," he said. "Easy." I nodded once. I didn't smile. I didn't take the phone from him. I didn't offer him the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. He walked out of the kitchen already typing, already sending it to people who hadn't seen what he'd done behind the scenes to get there. A few minutes later, the printer in the hallway coughed to life. It had always been my printer. I'd bought it, set it up, replaced the ink when it screamed at us, but he used it now like he'd always owned the right to it. Paper slid into the tray. Then more paper. The machine clicked and whirred and spit out pages with the kind of confidence only a device can have. He came back holding a fresh stack. "County recording," he said, like he'd learned the phrase overnight. They processed the deed. He dropped the stack on the counter and smoothed it with his palm. At the top was a receipt with a seal printed in gray and a number that looked official enough to shut people up. Recording number, a long code. Date, time, 8:42 Grantee, respondent, Michael Hale. Under it, my name was gone. Not crossed out. Not erased. Just not there. Like I'd never existed in that address at all. He tapped the line with his fingertip. "See, it's mine." End quote. And he waited for me to argue, because arguing was how he kept me connected to him. Even in divorce, he wanted me on the line. I didn't give it to him. "That's what you wanted," I said. He blinked. It threw him, the way silence always did. Then he recovered and put the paper back in his stack like the world had behaved. "Exactly," he said. "Now you can stop making it dramatic." Dramatic. He'd said it like the notary room had been a stage and I'd been the actress. He headed toward the living room with the papers, already on a call. "Yeah," he said, loud enough for me to hear. "It's recorded. Official. I told you I'd handle it." I started packing again. Small trips, small boxes, the quiet things that don't look like leaving until you notice what's missing. A roll of tape, a box cutter, a stack of towels folded into neat rectangles, because even my exits had always been tidy. I carried a box to my car and came back in for another. On the counter, his stack of paperwork had shifted. A few pages had slipped out of alignment, and a thin sheet had slid halfway free like it wanted air. The top line said, "Mortgage payoff statement," in thick, serious letters. I didn't touch it right away. Touching it felt like stepping into his lane, like he'd accuse me of snooping and turn it into a fight he could win. So I washed a mug first, I wiped the counter, I did one more pointless, domestic thing. Then, with 2 fingers, I pulled the payoff statement out just far enough to read. Numbers. Fees. A short validity window. This payoff is valid through. A date that was too soon. Total amount due. A number that made my throat tighten. And underneath, in smaller lines that were easy to ignore if you wanted to ignore them, late charges. Property inspection fee. Corporate advance. Past due amount. That last line sat there like a bruise. Past due amount, $7.08. I stopped reading before my eyes could finish it, because the exact number didn't matter as much as the existence of the line. Past due meant time had already run out once. Past due meant this wasn't a clean house you could just hand off with a signature and pretend it would behave. I slid the statement back into place exactly the way it had been, careful to keep his stack looking untouched. In the living room, he laughed into his phone. "I know," he said. "I know. I got everything. Everything." He said it like it was a compliment he'd earned. I taped the top of another box and wrote "kitchen" in marker. The ink bled slightly into the cardboard, fuzzy at the edges. My phone buzzed on the counter, face down, rattling against the granite. Not a message from him, not a calendar. A notification from the lender I still had access to, because the system moved slower than men with deadlines. Account alert. I didn't flip the phone over yet. I kept my hand on the box, steadying it. In the living room, his voice dropped. He'd put his call on speaker and didn't realize how much sound traveled through our house when there wasn't arguing to fill it. Yeah, I saw it," he said. "It's fine. It's handled." Then softer, like he was trying to convince the phone itself. "It's in my name now." A pause. Someone speaking on the other end. I couldn't hear words, but I heard the tone professional, unbothered, not impressed by confidence. He cleared his throat. "No. We just recorded the deed." Another pause. His laugh came out wrong this time. Too sharp. Too short. A laugh you use when a door doesn't open and you don't want anyone watching to notice. I finally flipped my phone over. The alert was one line, clean and cruel. Payment not received. past due amount applies. Below it, a date. Below it, a button. View options. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and went dark again. From the living room, my husband said, "Wait, what do you mean it's already?" He stopped mid-sentence, like he'd just reached the part of the paperwork he'd been skipping. The first delivery attempt came while I was at work. My phone buzzed once, then again 2 notifications stacked on top of each other like the system had learned his pacing. USPS, delivery attempted, signature required. When I clicked it, there was a tracking number and a photo of the slip. Bright white paper against our front door. The edge of it caught under the handle like a warning tag. "We redeliver for you." A box checked in blue ink, certified mail. Another box, signature required. No sender name, no mercy. By the time I got home, the slip was still there. The ink on it looked fresh, like the carrier had been standing on our porch only minutes earlier. Inside, the house was too quiet. My husband's shoes were by the door, but he wasn't in the living room. The TV was off. The kitchen lights were off. The air felt staged, like he'd left to avoid being seen in the middle of something. On the counter was the divorce packet. Still there, still thick, still pretending it was done. Next to it, his keys, his wallet, his phone. Face up. That should have been the first clue that he wasn't in control. He never left his phone behind unless he thought he was safe. It vibrated once while I was taking my jacket off. Unknown number. Then again. Same number. Same cadence. I didn't pick it up. I didn't flip it over to read the preview. I just watched it buzz itself tired. From the hallway, I heard a door open and close. The laundry room, maybe. Or the garage. He came in a second later with a tight look on his face, tight like he'd been rehearsing calm in a mirror and it wasn't sticking. "Mail came?" he asked. "There's a slip," I said, holding it up. His eyes snapped to it. Not to me. To the paper. To the check boxes. To the tracking number that meant the message had weight. "Who's it for?" he asked too fast. "It doesn't say." He moved closer, took the slip from my hand, and read it like he could argue with ink. "What time did they come?" he asked. "It's on there," I said. He scanned the line. Attempted, 2:14 p.m. He swore under his breath, not loud, not dramatic, just a small hiss that said something had gone off script. "I was here," he said. "They didn't knock." I didn't answer. People like him don't say things like that unless they need someone to be the audience for their denial. His phone buzzed on the counter again. He grabbed it in a sharp motion and stepped away as if distance would make the call less real. He answered on the first ring. "Hello?" His voice was polite. Business polite. The voice he used when he wanted strangers to believe him. A pause. Then, "Yes, this is Michael." Another pause. His eyes went to the divorce packet, like the pages could protect him if he stared hard enough. Yes, I'm aware," he said. "It's in process." I watched his knuckles whiten around the phone. The voice on the other end kept talking, steady and unbothered. It didn't speed up when he got tense. It didn't soften when he tried to sound important. He made a small laugh that wasn't a laugh. "Well, we just finalized everything," he said. It's all mine now." The way he said mine wasn't bragging this time. It was pleading. He listened again, eyes flicking to me like he wanted me to leave the room so he could pretend he was alone with the problem. I stayed. He lowered his voice, turned his shoulder, and said, Okay, I hear you. Is not friends, it's Lauded made it." Then sharper, "No, she's not." He stopped himself mid-sentence, like he remembered I was still standing there. His phone went silent. He ended the call and stared at the screen for a beat too long. Then he set the phone down like it had burned him. "It's nothing," he said. I didn't ask. I walked to the hallway closet and started pulling out my last things, scarves, a pair of boots, the umbrella that always stuck. Behind me, he picked his phone up again. I heard the camera click. He was taking photos of the slip. "I'm scheduling redelivery," he said, loud enough to be heard but not loud enough to sound worried. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed again, and this time he didn't answer. Instead, he opened an app and started typing with 2 thumbs, fast, angry, the way people type when they want the screen to fix their life. I carried a box to my car. When I came back in, the redelivery was already arranged. He'd pinned it to tomorrow morning like a corkboard note. Redelivery scheduled, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. He stood in the kitchen with his arms folded, waiting for the world to obey. "You're going to be here, right?" he asked. It wasn't a request. It was a setup. If I said no, he'd make it my fault. If I said yes, he'd use me as a tool. "I won't be," I said. His eyebrows lifted. "Why not?" "Because it's addressed to you," I said, and I watched his jaw tighten at the logic he couldn't argue with. He opened his mouth to say something mean, but his phone buzzed again. This time, there was a preview line I could see from where I stood. Voicemail, 047. "This is an urgent matter regarding—" He swiped it away without listening. The next morning, I didn't go back. I didn't need to. I'd already changed my address for the things that mattered: my paycheck, my insurance, my life, the systems that would follow me no matter what he said. At 11:18 a.m., my phone buzzed again with the same USPS tracking number. Delivered. Signature obtained. A minute later, another notification popped up from the lender, the kind of notification that doesn't ask your permission to exist. Important document available. And then, like the universe wanted the moment to land clean, my phone rang. Not his number. A number with our area code. I answered because I already knew what it was. "Hi," a woman said, clear and professional. "May I speak with Michael Hale?" "No," I said. "You may not." End quote. A pause. The tiny recalibration of someone who said this line 100 times and didn't expect it to break. "Are you Mrs. Hale?" "Not anymore," I said. Another pause. I could hear typing. "I'm calling regarding a notice sent to Mr. Hale," she said. "The account requires immediate attention." "I'm not on that account," I said, because that was the truth the system cared about. "You'll need to contact him." She didn't argue. She didn't threaten. She didn't bargain. Systems don't do that. "Thank you," she said. "We will." When I hung up, my hands were steady. Somewhere across town, he was standing on our porch, signing for a thick envelope with a green card attached, writing his name in ink that would live longer than his confidence. I didn't see the envelope. I didn't need to. Because at 1:04 p.m., a screenshot appeared in a group text I'd been muted in for weeks, his friends still using it to organize weekends and talk about sports like nothing had changed. It was a photo taken at an angle, slightly blurred, like it was snapped in a panic. A white page on the kitchen counter. A bold, stamped header. Notice of default. And underneath, his name printed wrong by one letter. Michael Hale. Beneath that, in smaller text that didn't care about spelling, cure deadline. Date. The message under the photo was one line. From him, "Do not talk about this." He'd taken everything in the divorce. And the first thing the system sent him after the ink dried was a deadline he couldn't bully. By nightfall, his friends had turned the default notice into a rumor they could hold at arm's length. Not because they were cruel. Because people like my husband train a room to protect them. They make discomfort feel impolite. They make questions feel like betrayal. The group chat I'd muted kept flashing with little gray badges anyway, numbers stacking like missed calls. When I finally opened it, the thread was still trying to be what it had always been. Weekend plans, jokes, sports, a meme someone posted at 2 a.m. like nothing had shifted. Then the congratulations came late, forced, trying to cover what they'd already seen. Still, congrats, man. Keeping the house is huge. It's Bran Roos. You did what you had to do. Fresh start, new chapter. No one mentioned the photo he'd posted. No one typed the words "notice of default" back to him. They talked around it like it was a stain on a tablecloth, and they didn't want to admit they'd spilled something. My husband replied with one-liners. "It's handled. Not a big deal. Just paperwork." Paperwork. That was his religion. If he could reduce a problem to paper, he could pretend it was already solved. The next morning, he moved through the house like a man in a suit he'd slept in. He didn't look at the slip. He didn't look at the envelope he'd shoved into a drawer. He didn't say the lender's name out loud. He did, however, open every app that made him feel like he was in charge. His banking, his email, his credit. I was in the living room packing the last of the books into a small box when I heard the sound sharp, bright, wrong. a notification chime that wasn't his usual tone. Then another. Then the quiet scrape of his chair as he stood up too fast. He was at the kitchen island, phone in both hands, eyes fixed. His mouth was slightly open like he'd been interrupted mid-breath. He didn't notice I'd paused, or maybe he did and didn't want to. "What is it?" I asked, because the question was simple and I didn't say it with emotion. I said it the way you'd ask if the stove was on. He blinked like I'd startled him. "Nothing," he said. "Just noise. Thanks for watching." But his phone was bright in his hands, bright enough that I saw the header from where I stood. Credit monitoring alert. Change detected. His thumb hovered over it the way a person hovers over a bruise. He tapped it anyway. I watched his shoulders lift and lock, watched him swallow. Then he did something that told me everything without him saying a word. He set the phone down face down, not flipped gently, placed hard, like he wanted the screen to stop existing. I went back to packing. I didn't ask again. If I asked, he'd turn it into a fight. If it was a fight, it was something he could perform. Silence was worse for him. Silence let the system speak without translation. A minute later, his phone buzzed again. He didn't look, he just picked it up and walked into the hallway, away from me, away from the windows, away from any angle where a neighbor might read his face. I heard the front door open and close. Then I heard him in the garage on another call, low voice, fast sentences, the sound of someone trying to reverse time. I kept packing the books. My phone buzzed. Not a call. Not a message. A calendar notification I didn't recognize at first because it wasn't mine. Refinance appointment 11. A.M. Location: Riverstone Credit Union Main Branch. Notes: bring ID. Bring payoff statement. Confirm status. I stared at it, confused, because I hadn't put that on my calendar. Then I saw the little icon next to the event. Shared. He'd added me to the shared calendar years ago when we were still pretending teamwork would fix us. He'd never bothered to remove me because he liked the illusion of control more than he liked the reality of cleanup. He'd scheduled the refinance like a doctor's visit, like a way to outrun the words stamped on that notice. My phone buzzed again. An email this time forwarded. No message from him, just a subject line and an attachment. FWD, Refinance Confirmation, Riverstone CU. Appointment, Thursday, 11 a.m. Checklist. Active loan must be current. Any delinquency may result in closure. The email had the tidy tone of someone who'd never met my husband and didn't plan to. At the bottom, a line in smaller print. If your loan is not current at the time of review, your application may be closed without appeal. Closed without appeal. No argument. No charm. No, but you don't understand. Just a door that doesn't open. I didn't respond to his forward. I didn't need to. He hadn't sent it because he wanted my help. He'd sent it because he wanted me to see him trying. He wanted an audience for his control. Outside, the garage door rattled open. He backed out fast, tires crunching too hard on the driveway gravel. I watched from the living room window as he pulled away, then stopped at the curb like he'd forgotten something important. He didn't come back in. He just sat there in the car, staring down at his phone, thumb moving in frantic little swipes. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was the group chat. Someone had finally tried to be brave. "Bro, are you good? That lender call last night was weird." 3 dots appeared under my husband's name. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then his message landed, clipped and sharp. "Stop asking. It's handled. Focus on Thursday. Focus on Thursday." Like Thursday was going to erase the notice. Like an appointment could rewrite a deadline. I put my phone down and taped the last box shut. In the kitchen, the divorce packet was still in the bottom drawer where I'd started stacking things I didn't want to see. The barcode label on the front of the envelope still stared up at me when I opened it, black lines on white paper like proof of delivery. I pushed the drawer closed. Behind me, the house was emptying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just in quiet, careful pieces. And somewhere across town, my husband was trying to refinance a problem he'd insisted was mine for years until I signed my name off it. He picked the patio on purpose. A place with string lights and heat lamps and enough noise to blur a conversation into background. a place where he could smile at people and keep his voice low when it mattered. It was Friday evening, 2 days after the photo in the group chat. One day after the refinance confirmation hit our shared calendar like a countdown, he texted the group first. Drinks. Same spot. Normal. Normal was his favorite lie. I wasn't invited the way a person is invited. I was included the way furniture is included because it made his story look balanced if I sat there quietly and didn't make anyone uncomfortable. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose and picked the seat at the end of the table where I could leave without asking anyone to move. The table was already full of glasses, sweating rings into coasters. Someone had ordered nachos. Someone had already started the "you're better off" speech like it was a script they'd rehearsed. My husband was in the center, leaning back, one arm stretched along the bench like he owned the whole booth. When he saw me, he gave me that bright, practiced smile, the one that said, "Be good, be quiet, let me finish." "You made it," he said, like we were still a team. I nodded and sat down. The bartender dropped a menu in front of me. My husband didn't wait to see what I'd order. He started talking over the table. "So," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "it's done. Paperwork is filed. House is sorted. I'm finally breathing." Sorted. I watched the way his friends nodded like they were applauding a performance they didn't fully understand. "Cheers to that," someone said, lifting a glass. They clinked, smiled, tried to rebuild the moment from part one like it had never cracked. My husband lifted his drink too, but his phone was already on the table. Face up, like he was daring it to behave. The screen stayed dark for a full minute. Then it lit. Lender. The glow crawled up the underside of his wrist. He froze for half a second, just long enough for me to see it. He flipped the phone over fast. Face down. 2 fingers. Same move as before. Like if he did it quickly enough, the room wouldn't notice. But the table had learned his tells. The friend across from him paused mid-sentence. The one beside him stopped laughing for a beat too long. My husband kept talking anyway. "Honestly," he said, "it's been a long time coming." His phone buzzed again, muffled against the wood. He pressed his palm down on it like he could smother vibration. Someone tried to save him. "So what now?" a woman asked. Like, "What do you even do with the extra bedroom?" My husband laughed too loudly. "Whatever I want." Buzz. This time the phone skated a fraction of an inch out from under his hand. Buzz. Buzz. The sound wasn't loud, but it was relentless, and that's what made it impossible to ignore. Like dripping water in an otherwise quiet room. He lifted his phone and checked it under the table, thinking the angle would hide him. It didn't. The glow lit his lap. I saw his face change, not dramatic, not panicked, just a subtle tightening around the eyes like the muscles had decided to lock. He set the phone down again, harder, face down. The friend nearest me lowered his glass slowly and didn't pick it back up. He stared at the table, at the phone, at the space where laughter was supposed to be. "Bro," he said, trying to keep it casual. "You good?" My husband didn't answer him. He answered the idea of him. "Fine," he said. "It's just calls." Astes. Buzz again. Longer this time, like the other side was letting it ring, like a person had decided not to hang up. My husband's jaw clicked once. He stood up. "I'm gonna take this," he said, already walking away from the table. No explanation, no joke, no performance. He stepped around a heat lamp and moved toward the edge of the patio where the music thinned and the sidewalk noise took over. He held the phone to his ear, turning his back like his body could block sound. It didn't block his face. I could see him through the gaps between people. His shoulders hunched slightly forward, his free hand clenched and unclenched at his side. He said one short sentence. Then he stopped himself, took a breath, and changed tone. Business tone, polite tone, the tone he used when charm was supposed to fix a rule. The table stayed quiet in the meantime. Someone made a small comment about the weather and got nothing back. Someone reached for a chip and put it down without eating it. The bartender walked past with a tray and slowed, sensing the pause, then kept going like she'd learned not to step into other people's tension. The woman who'd asked about the extra bedroom leaned toward me and whispered, "Is it about the mortgage?" She said mortgage like it was impolite to name, like the word itself might break the spell. I looked at my drink. You'd have to ask him. And Ires's. She nodded like that was fair, and then she didn't ask him. Nobody did. They watched him instead. My husband's voice rose a notch, not yelling, but sharper, clipped with the edge of someone hearing words he didn't want. I can't, he said, then lowered it again immediately. Not here. Not here. It landed like a confession. He stepped farther away, closer to the sidewalk, like he was trying to outrun the patio's string lights and the eyes watching him. I didn't move. I didn't follow. I didn't rescue him with a distraction. Rescue would make this ours again. Across the table, his friend cleared his throat. He said it was handled. Nobody responded to that. A minute later, my husband ended the call and stood still with the phone in front of his face, reading. The screen reflected in his eyes. Then his phone buzzed again immediately. He didn't answer. He stared at it, thumb hovering, like he was deciding which version of himself to be. A new message came through preview text bright for half a second before he covered it. I couldn't read the full line from where I sat, but I saw the first word, urgent. He swallowed and put the phone back to his ear on the second ring this time. Listen, he said, low. I'm in the middle of something. Then he paused, and whatever he heard made him go very still. His shoulders tightened, and he turned his head slightly as if he could physically shake off the sentence. At the table, his friend's phone lit up too, one of those mirrored moments where the same news finds multiple screens. He looked down at it, then looked up at me. He said, voice careful. Mike just texted. He says nobody's supposed to talk about it. I didn't ask to see the message. I didn't need to. The table stayed silent until my husband finally walked back, phone in his hand, smile rebuilt like a wall he'd stacked up quickly. Sorry, he said, too light. It's just admin stuff. Cassidy Zevin, admin stuff. He sat down and put his phone on the table, face down. He pressed his fingers against it like a clamp. Someone tried one last time to restart the night. So Thursday, the friend across from him said, forcing brightness. You got that appointment, right? You're gonna be good. My husband nodded too fast. Yeah, he said. Thursday. He looked straight at me for the first time all night, and there was something sharp behind his eyes, an unspoken command. Don't make me say it. Don't make me ask you. I held his gaze and gave him nothing. Not a nod, not a fight, not an expression he could use later. His phone buzzed under his hand one more time, like the system had heard the word Thursday and wasn't impressed. He didn't answer it. He just sat there, fingers pressed down, while the people around him pretended not to watch. And in that quiet, it was clear to everyone at the table what he couldn't admit out loud. The divorce was final, but the house wasn't finished with him. By Monday, the lenders stopped calling like it was a reminder and started calling like it was a requirement. My husband's phone rang at 7:58 a.m. while he was standing at the kitchen sink pretending to rinse a coffee mug that was already clean. He stared at the screen. Didn't answer. It rang again at 8:03, again at 8:11. Then, a little after 8:30, he finally picked up because ignoring a system only works until the system decides you're the only name left. Michael Hale, he said, too formal for our kitchen. I was at the dining table with a box open in front of me, wrapping glassware in paper. The tape dispenser sat by my elbow. My phone was face down beside it. I didn't look up. A woman's voice spilled out of his speaker, clear enough that I could hear her without trying. Mr. Hale, this is regarding the notice sent on your mortgage account. We need to verify documentation and discuss immediate next steps. Immediate next steps. The phrase had weight. It didn't ask for permission. He moved the phone off speaker, but he didn't turn it all the way down. He wanted privacy. He didn't want silence. Silence would mean being alone with it. Yeah, he said. I saw the notice. It's a misunderstanding. A pause. No, he said, then softened quickly. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying it's in transition. Transition was his newest favorite word, like time itself was a defense. The voice on the other end didn't change. We need the following. she said, and I could hear the faint click of a keyboard, like she was reading from a screen that didn't care about his tone. Updated proof of coverage, the payoff statement you referenced, and confirmation of current status. We also need to verify who is authorized to speak on the account. My husband's gaze slid toward me before he could stop it, just a flicker, a calculation. He lowered his voice and turned his back like it would make my name disappear. I'm authorized, he said. It's in my name now. Another pause. He nodded at nothing. Okay, I understand. Then, too fast. No, my ex-wife doesn't. He stopped. Because I was still there. Because I could still hear the part where he tried to put me back into the sentence. He cleared his throat and tried again. I'll get you what you need, he said. Today. He ended the call and stood very still, staring at the refrigerator door like it might offer a solution if he stared long enough. Then he did what he always did when reality didn't follow his script. He started gathering paper. He opened drawers. He pulled out folders. He stacked statements on the counter. He flipped through them with the kind of aggression people use when they think speed can change an outcome. Where's that payoff statement? He asked, half to me and half to the air. I kept wrapping glasses. He found it himself, because he knew where he'd left it. He knew everything in that house when it mattered to him. He laid it flat on the island and traced lines with his fingertip, jaw working as he read. His mouth moved without sound. He grabbed a pen and started writing on the margins, circling fees, underlining dates, adding little arrows like the paper was a test he could pass if he marked it hard enough. The pen clicked. Clicked again. The same nervous rhythm he used at court check-ins and parent-teacher conferences. Then his phone buzzed. Not a call this time. An email. He opened it, read the first line, and his face changed in a way he couldn't hide. He turned the screen away from me out of instinct, even though I wasn't trying to see it. Do you have, he started. He stopped himself, swallowed, and tried again like he was choosing words from a menu. Do you still have access, he said, to anything from the old account? Old account. Not ours. Old. Like it had died naturally instead of being cut. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know. Because I wanted the silence to sit between us long enough for him to feel the shape of what he'd done. He tapped his phone, thumb moving fast. The lender said, I need proof of coverage, he said. Insurance, statements, whatever. He kept his eyes on the screen while he spoke, like eye contact would turn it into a plea. I set a wrapped glass gently into the box and folded the paper around it like a blanket. You're the borrower, I said. You can request it. His head snapped up. His eyes went sharp. It's not that simple, he said. It was. It just wasn't flattering. His phone rang again. He let it ring twice, then answered like he was trying to sound calm enough to be trusted. Yes, he said. I have the payoff. Yes, I can send it. A pause. I'm at work, he lied, without blinking. I kept packing. The voice different this time. Maybe a different department spoke in a practiced tone. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough to understand the shape of it. Verification. Authorization. Deadlines. Cure. Words that don't bend. My husband's shoulders rose slowly, like he was bracing for impact. I can't do that by then, he said, and the edge in his voice slipped out. I have an appointment. He paused, listened, and his face tightened. No, he said, quieter. No, I understand. After ACEs. He ended the call and stared at the table, the payoff statement, the pen, the stack of papers that suddenly looked too small to fight what was coming. For a second, he looked like he might explode into anger, because anger was his tool. But there was nowhere to put it that would make the lender's screen change. So instead, he did something smaller and meaner. He tried to pull me back into the mess. You're not seriously just leaving me with this, he said. I taped the box shut, slow and clean. I'm leaving you with what you asked for, I said, and I kept my voice even. He opened his mouth, then shut it like he'd bitten his own tongue. Because the words were true, and truth was the one thing he couldn't argue with in a system that kept records. I carried the box to the front door. The house felt different with each trip, lighter, emptier, less willing to pretend. On my last pass through the hallway, I paused at the closet where we used to hang coats. My side was already bare. In the kitchen, my husband was still standing over the payoff statement, phone in one hand, pen in the other, like he didn't know which tool could fix it faster. He didn't look up when I walked past him. I went to the bedroom one final time and pulled the last small box from under the bed letters, a spare charger, a sweater I'd forgotten back there. Then I walked back to the front entry and set my keys on the console table. Not tossed. Placed. 1 ring. 2 keys. A tiny house-shaped fob he'd bought years ago as a joke. I left them exactly where he'd see them when he came looking for someone to blame. He heard the sound anyway, the soft metal click, and turned around. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Returning access," I said. He stepped toward me, the old reflex of taking up space. "You can't just—" "I can," I said, and I opened the door. The air outside was cold and plain, no drama in it, just weather. Behind me, he said my name once, sharp, like it was a lever he'd used for years. I didn't turn. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket, another shared calendar reminder trying to make Thursday feel like salvation. Refinance checklist. Due. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because I'd heard the words that mattered already from a voice that didn't care how convincing my husband could be in public. Confirm current status. Any delinquency may result in closure. And for the first time since he'd said, "Sign today," the clock wasn't squeezing me. It was squeezing him. The credit union didn't wait for Thursday to make its decision. On Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with another shared calendar reminder I didn't open. I was at my new place, half unpacked, boxes stacked like a temporary wall when the next notification arrived and cut through everything. Not a call. An email. Riverstone Credit Union application update. No emojis, no soft language, just a subject line that felt like a door closing. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my screen while I set a plate into a cabinet that didn't belong to him. I took a breath. Then I tapped. The message was short. Mr. Hale. After review, we are unable to proceed at this time. Status. Application closed. Reason. Active default. Underneath, a checklist with neat little boxes, some checked, some blank, like the problem was just a sequence he'd failed to complete. Identity verified. Payoff statement received. Current status confirmed. Loan current at time of review. Then a line that wasn't dramatic, just final. This decision is based on information currently available in your file. Information currently available, meaning what the system already knew. A minute later, another email came through, same sender, different attachment. Adverse action notice, PDF. I didn't need to open it to know what it would say. I'd spent enough years watching him try to talk his way around screens. Still, I opened it. The PDF looked like every other official document. Clean margins, bold headings, a reason code like a bruise you can't argue with. Application closed. Active default. And in the corner, the date printed like a stamp. I stared until my eyes stopped looking for a loophole. Then I got up and made coffee in a kitchen that didn't carry his voice. Across town, he reacted the way I'd expected. Not with acceptance. With movement. My phone rang his number twice in a row. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts, one after another, the tone shifting with each bubble. "Did you get anything from Riverstone? I need you to send me the insurance proof from when we were on the old policy. This is ridiculous. They're messing something up. Just forward me whatever you have so I can fix it." Fix it. Like it was a typo. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. New text. Shorter. Meaner. "You're really going to do this?" Do what? Not rescue him from what he'd demanded. I set my phone face down and kept unpacking. By lunchtime, I had 3 voicemails from him and one from a number I didn't recognize. I listened to the unknown number first. A recorded voice, calm and automated, like it had never heard anyone beg. "This is a courtesy call from Riverstone Credit Union. Your refinance application has been closed. For questions, refer to your adverse action notice. No negotiation. No, press 2 to explain yourself." I deleted it. Then I listened to his voicemail. His voice started controlled, the way he used to start conversations with teachers and doctors. "Hey," he said. "Call me back. I need a couple things to clear this up." Then his tone changed mid-sentence, slipping into the part of him that believed pressure was a shortcut. "This affects you too," he said, like a threat dressed up as truth. "If you don't help me fix it, you're going to regret it, Tadeya." I sat there for a moment with the phone against my ear, hearing the same pattern I'd signed to end. He couldn't threaten a lender, so he tried to threaten me. I didn't call back. Instead, I did the only thing that ever mattered in our divorce. I let the system stay the system. I opened the court portal and checked my case one more time. Final judgment, entered, closed. Then I called the mediator's office, not because I needed their help, but because he would try to use them as a stage. I listened to the voicemail greeting, then pressed the option for existing case. A woman's voice returned, clipped and kind in the way professionals get after years of watching people unravel. "Hi, you've reached the office line," she said. "If your matter has been finalized, please note, files are closed upon entry of judgment. We cannot reopen negotiations. For mortgage servicing questions, contact your lender directly." I listened to it twice. Files are closed. No reopening. No redo. No new signature pages. He couldn't drag me back into the ending after the ending was stamped. That evening, he showed up anyway. I heard his knock before I saw him on the camera, 3 sharp hits like a punctuation mark. I didn't open the door. I watched him through the peephole. He stood too close, filling the frame like he wanted to remind me what his body used to do to rooms. In one hand, he held a thick folder. In the other, his phone. He knocked again. When I didn't answer, he started talking through the door like the wood was just another person he could wear down. "I know you're in there," he said, too loud for a hallway in an apartment building. I heard a neighbor's door click somewhere down the corridor, then go quiet again. "Open up," he said. "This is stupid." I stayed still. His phone lit up in his hand. I could see the glow through the peephole, blue-white against his face. He looked down, read something, and his mouth tightened. Then he raised the folder like he was showing it to a judge. "I printed the notice," he said. "I printed everything. Riverstone says it's closed because of an active default. That's not right. Not right. Not fair. Not what he'd promised people." He knocked once more, harder. "Just sign this," he said, and the sentence was so familiar it almost made me laugh. "It's just a correction. They need your authorization on play." He stopped because he knew he was lying, because he knew I knew. "What exactly?" I said through the door, my voice even. "Are you asking me to sign?" He exhaled, like the question was disrespect. "The insurance release," he said. "The coverage letter. Anything. Something that shows..." "That shows what?" "That the default belonged to both of us. That the weight could be dragged back onto my name." I didn't respond. Silence stretched long enough that I heard him shift his feet, heard the folder scrape against his jacket, heard him swallow. Then he tried again. Softer. Like softness was a new tool. "Come on," he said. "Be reasonable." Reasonable. The word people use when they want you to agree to something that hurts you politely. I looked at the deadbolt, the chain, the quiet hallway. I thought about the notary's stamp, the court portal status, the county recording number. I thought about the email sitting in my inbox with the words, "Application closed," printed like a verdict. And I let the answer be simple. No. Anyway. His face changed in the peephole fast, ugly. He lifted the folder again like he might slide it under the door, like paper could sneak past boundaries. "Fine," he said, and the word was sharp enough to cut. "Then you can explain it when they come for you too." He waited, like he expected that line to work. It didn't, because the system had already picked its name. He stood there another second, phone buzzing once in his hand, and then he turned and walked away down the hallway with his folder tucked tight against his chest, like he could hold the consequences closed if he held the paper hard enough. He tried 3 more times before Thursday. Not dramatic tries. Not pleading tries. The kind of tries that come with attachments and short sentences like, if he kept it procedural, it would stay controllable. The first was a text at 6:12 a.m. "Need you to confirm you won't interfere." Interfere. Like my absence was sabotage. I didn't answer. The second was an email forwarded with no message again. A lender contact form. A release authorization. A blank line where my signature used to live in our marriage like a default setting. I didn't print it. I didn't reply. The third was him showing up at my door again, folder in hand, this time earlier, this time quieter, like he'd decided intimidation worked better when it didn't leave witnesses. I watched him on the camera for a full minute before I spoke through the door. "I told you no," I said. "You're making this harder than it has to be," he said, voice low, controlled, the way he talked when he wanted to sound like the reasonable one. "I'm not making anything," I said. "I signed what you wanted. It's filed." He breathed out like my calm was an insult. "Open the door," he said. "Just listen." No. A pause. Then the pivot, his favorite pivot. "Okay," he said, softer. "Then just talk to them with me." The words were almost polite, almost believable. "What do you mean?" I asked, because precision was the only thing that kept him from rewriting reality. He lifted his phone up like an offering. "The lender. I'll call. You can confirm whatever they're asking for. It'll take 2 minutes. Confirm. Whatever. 2 minutes." The phrase was engineered to sound harmless. I pictured a notary stamp, a pen click, a gray tab that said "Initial." I pictured the line in the Riverstone email, "Application closed." Reason, "Active default." I pictured his friends watching him clamp his hand over his phone at the patio table. "No," I said. "You can call them." "You don't understand," he snapped, and the softness dropped off him like a coat. "They keep asking about you." In quote. They weren't asking about me. They were asking about the space where my name used to be. I didn't argue it. I just stayed quiet. He swallowed, adjusted his grip on the folder like he was choosing a different weapon. "Fine," he said. "I'm calling right now. Listen, you'll hear it." Before I could respond, he tapped his screen. The call connected quickly, like he'd been rehearsing for this moment. A ring. Then another. Then a woman answered with the same calm I'd heard through his kitchen speaker earlier. "Mortgage servicing. This is Elaine. May I have your loan number or property address?" My husband straightened in the hallway outside my door like posture could change policy. "Hi, yes," he said. "This is Michael Hale. I'm calling about a notice there's a default listed, but I've been trying to refinance and—" "Mr. Pace. Hale," she cut in gently, and her gentleness was worse than rudeness because it meant she wasn't afraid of him. "Before we discuss the account, I need to verify authorization. Are you the borrower of record?" "Yes," he said too fast. "It's in my name now." "I see," she said, keys clicking. "And do you have anyone else authorized to speak on the account?" He glanced at my door like he could see through it. "Yes," he said, and his voice changed smoother, performative. "My ex-wife can confirm." "Mr. Hale," she said, same tone, same speed. "I need to be clear. Only the borrower of record can authorize changes or provide consent for account actions. If your ex-spouse is not a borrower, she cannot authorize on your behalf." My husband's mouth opened, then closed. He tried again. "I'm not asking her to authorize," he said. "I'm asking her to confirm coverage insurance. She has the old information." "Insurance documentation can be obtained through your carrier," Elaine said. "If you are the borrower, you can request coverage letters directly. We cannot accept third-party authorization unless it is in writing and meets our requirements." Requirements. That word sat there like a lock. My husband's voice sharpened. "So what are you saying, that I can't fix this?" Elaine didn't rise to meet him. "I'm saying," she replied, "that the account reflects an active delinquency. The notice provides a cure deadline. If you want to avoid further action, you will need to bring the loan current and provide the required documentation. I can reread the list if you'd like." Reread the list. Like he was a student who'd missed the lesson. He stared at his phone as if it had betrayed him by letting me hear. "I have an appointment Thursday," he said, clipped. "A refinance." "That should clear." "A refinance is separate," Elaine said. "Our system will remain in default status until the delinquency is cured." A pause long enough that I heard my own breathing inside my apartment. My husband swallowed. "So, you're telling me—" "I'm telling you what the account shows," she said, and there was a kind of quiet finality in it. "Would you like the cure amount and deadline repeated?" He didn't answer right away. Because he wanted to argue with her. Because he couldn't. He ended the call with a hard tap and stood still in the hallway, the folder pressed against his chest like a shield that had stopped working. For a moment, I thought he might explode, raise his voice, pound on the door, make it ugly enough that someone would come out and ask what happened. But his anger didn't have anywhere to go that could change a recorded status. So he did the next thing he always did when he lost control. He tried to rewrite the story. He leaned closer to my door and lowered his voice like it was a secret between us. "You heard her," he said. "They're confused. The timing is off. If you just cooperate." "I heard her," I said. "She said you're the borrower." His eyes narrowed. "You're being smug," he said, like calm was cruelty. "I'm being done," I said. He stared at the door a beat longer, and then his phone buzzed in his hand, screen glow leaking across his thumb. He looked down. Read. Went still. A new message preview only, but the first 2 words were enough to show on his face. Final notice. His jaw tightened like his teeth were holding something back. He shoved the phone into his pocket and stepped away from my door, as if distance would make the words stop chasing him. "Thursday," he said, more to himself than to me. "Just Thursday." Then he walked down the hallway without looking back, folder tucked under his arm, shoulders stiff with the effort of keeping his panic private. I waited until his footsteps faded. Then I sat at my kitchen table and opened the court portal on my laptop because it was the only place the truth didn't change depending on who was talking. Final judgment. Entered. Case status. Closed. I stared at it until the tightness in my chest loosened. My phone buzzed once shared calendar again. Refinance. 11 a.m. Bring ID. I didn't respond to it. I just set my phone face down and watched the screen go dark. Because Thursday was coming either way. And for the first time, the appointment wasn't a trap for me. It was a room with a chair and a clipboard that he couldn't charm. Riverstone Credit Union smelled like carpet cleaner and paper. It was the kind of place that tried to feel calm on purpose, soft lighting, muted blue chairs bolted into neat rows, a wall-mounted TV playing the news with the volume turned down low enough to be polite. A receptionist sat behind glass and smiled like she'd been trained to be unbothered by other people's emergencies. My husband walked in like he was late to something important, even though he was 10 minutes early. He wore the same jacket he'd worn to court, the one that made him look like a man who had paperwork and therefore deserved respect. He saw me by the entrance, and his expression tightened just for a second. I hadn't come for him. I'd come for the shape of the room. A waiting room is a truth teller. It shows you how people behave when they can't control the pace. He walked straight to the counter and leaned slightly forward. "Hi," he said, voice bright. "Michael Hale. Refinance appointment. 11 o'clock. The receptionist looked at her screen and typed with 2 fingers. Her nails clicked softly, steady as a metronome. "Yes," she said, "I see it." My husband exhaled like that was a win. She slid a clipboard through the little opening at the bottom of the glass. "Please fill this out," she said, "and a copy of your ID." He took the clipboard like it was an insult. "I already provided ID," he said. "I've done all of this." She didn't react. She just repeated in the same voice you'd use to tell someone where the bathroom was. "I still need it completed for today's meeting." He glanced at me, quick and sharp, like he wanted me to see that he was being inconvenienced. I didn't move. He sat down 2 chairs away from me, leaving the middle chair empty like a buffer he could claim if he needed space to perform calm. The clipboard sat on his lap. The pen was attached by a little chain, the same setup as the notary office, the same message. "This is not yours to control. This is ours." He clicked the pen once, hard, as if the click could puncture the moment and let air out. Then he started writing. Name, address, social, employment. The same lines he'd been trying to outrun for weeks. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and checked it under the clipboard like he thought the angle made it private. The glow lit his knuckles. He flipped it face down on top of the form. He always did that when he wanted to feel like he was choosing silence instead of being forced into it. Across the room, a couple sat with a toddler and a paper cup of Cheerios. The child dropped one on the floor and stared at it like it was a tragedy. The father picked it up and put it back in the cup without a word. The room moved in quiet routines. Ordinary problems, normal appointments. My husband couldn't stand that. He finished the form and stood, already walking back to the counter before the ink had time to settle. He slid the clipboard through the slot. "Here," he said. "Can we go back now?" The receptionist took it, glanced at the top page, and nodded once. "They'll call you," she said. He sat down again, but he didn't settle. His knee bounced. His fingers tapped his thigh in a rhythm that had nothing to do with patience. At 11:03, a door opened to the right and a woman stepped into the waiting area holding a folder. "Mr. Hale?" she asked. My husband stood so fast his chair made a sound on the tile. "That's me," he said, already smiling, already trying to reset himself into the version of a man who handled things. The loan officer looked at him, then at me. "And you are?" My husband's smile wavered for a fraction of a second. He started, then stopped, and chose a different word. "She's just here. Just here. Like I was a coat he'd brought along by accident." The loan officer nodded the way people nod when they don't want to get involved. "Okay," she said. "This way." Actually never dated. The office was small and clean and set up for controlled conversations. 2 chairs in front of a desk, a computer monitor angled so only she could see it, a printer on a cabinet behind her, quiet for now. A 3rd chair sat in the corner like a witness seat. My husband moved like he owned the room anyway. He took the chair closest to her desk and set his folder down with a soft thud, making sure she saw how prepared he was. I took the corner chair. The loan officer sat, opened his file, and smiled politely. "Thanks for coming in," she said. "I just need to review a few things with you." My husband nodded too many times. "Perfect," he said. "I brought everything." She clicked her mouse and stared at the screen for a moment longer than comfortable. Not dramatic, just careful. My husband's smile held. His posture stayed tall. The performance started. Then she asked, "Can you confirm your current address?" He answered quickly. She typed. "And your employment is still with—" He answered. She typed. Then she paused, eyes on the monitor. My husband kept talking to fill the space. "I don't know why it's showing what it's showing," he said, waving a hand like the screen was being dramatic. "There was a timing issue. My ex moved out, paperwork was filed, everything's in my name now, so it should be clean." Clean. He said it like the word could overwrite a status. The loan officer didn't look up. "Okay," she said gently. "I do need to verify current status before we proceed." My husband's jaw tightened. "It is current," he said, too fast. The loan officer clicked again. Scrolled. Clicked again. Then she asked, "Do you have proof the delinquency has been cured?" Cured. My husband blinked, like he hadn't expected the word to be said out loud in this room. "I have the payoff statement," he said, flipping open his folder and pulling it out like a shield. "Right here." End quote. He slid it across the desk with a small flourish, as if paper could impress a system. She looked at it and nodded. "Thank you," she said, and set it beside her keyboard. Then she looked back at the screen. Silence stretched. My husband shifted in his chair, and the leather squeaked. "Well?" he asked, trying to keep it light. "So we're good?" The loan officer's mouth tightened, not unkindly, just professionally. "I'm seeing an active delinquency reflected in the file," she said. My husband laughed once, sharp. "No," he said. "That's what I'm saying. That's the error. It's being handled." She nodded again, the kind of nod that means, "I heard you, and also, I can't change what I'm seeing." "Do you have documentation showing the account is current?" she asked. "As of today?" He opened his mouth and then closed it. His phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up and reflected in his eyes before he could flip it. He slapped it face down, too hard. He began. "I've been making calls. I have an appointment. That's why we're here." The loan officer kept her voice calm. "I understand," she said, "but our underwriting requires the account to be current at the time of review." My husband leaned forward, as if proximity would change policy. "So, what are you saying?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. She clicked once more, eyes scanning, then reached toward her printer. The printer woke up with a soft mechanical sound, like it had been holding its breath. Paper fed through. My husband's face changed as soon as he heard it. A printout meant something was becoming permanent. The loan officer watched the page emerge, took it gently, and held it without flipping it toward him yet. She looked at him then directly, finally, and her expression was careful. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I need to go over what this means for your file." My husband swallowed. Behind him, the waiting room hummed in quiet normalcy. Somewhere out there, a toddler dropped another Cheerios and a father picked it up without making a scene. In here, my husband sat very still, hands on his knees, trying to keep his face from showing the one thing he couldn't afford in a public office with fluorescent lighting and witnesses in line behind him: fear. The loan officer didn't slide the paper across the desk right away. She set it down in front of her, squared the corners with the edge like it mattered that it was neat, and kept her hands resting on it for a second, like she was giving him time to become the version of himself that could hear rules. "Okay," she said, voice still calm. "Here's what I'm seeing." My husband leaned forward, chin lifted, eyes sharp, trying to turn her into a person he could negotiate with instead of a screen with a policy behind it. She turned the page slightly so he could read. A clean header, bold enough to be final. Application closed. Reason: active default. There were no exclamation points. No scolding, just a status. My husband blinked twice, like the words might rearrange if he stared hard enough. That's he started. The loan officer raised a hand, not rude, just a professional pause. "I'm going to explain," she said. "Our underwriting requires the existing obligation to be current at the time of review. Your file reflects an active delinquency as of today." He exhaled through his nose, sharp. "But I have an appointment," he said, and the sentence landed wrong in the room, like he'd forgotten where he was. "I'm here. I brought everything." "I see that," she said, and her eyes flicked to his folder like she was acknowledging the effort without rewarding it. "But this isn't about what you brought. It's about what the account status shows right now." They was. My husband turned his head toward the monitor, as if he could lean far enough to read it through her shoulder. "Can't you override it?" he asked. The loan officer didn't flinch. "No." One syllable. No softness. No fight. She tapped the paper once with her finger. "This," she said, "is the adverse action for the refinance application. It's closed." Closed. He stared at the word like it was personal. In the waiting room outside, someone laughed quietly at something on a phone. A printer somewhere else in the building hummed. Chairs creaked. Ordinary noise moved through the building like nothing was happening. In this office, it felt like the air had thickened. My husband tried again, because trying again was his reflex. "Okay, but if I cure it today," he began. "If I make a payment, you can reapply once the account is current," the loan officer said. "But for this file, as of this review, it's closed." He opened his mouth, closed it. His phone buzzed on the desk, face down. The vibration was muffled, but it was enough to shift his focus for a second. He pressed his fingertips to it like a clamp, then forced his eyes back to the paper. The loan officer slid the printout an inch closer to him. "At the bottom," she said, "you'll see the reason code and the date. If you have questions, you can call the number listed." She paused, then added, "But the decision is based on the current status. IO." My husband's jaw flexed like he was grinding down a thought. Across the corner chair, I watched him do the math he'd been avoiding for weeks. Deadlines, statuses, records, all the things he couldn't charm. He picked up the page like he was lifting something fragile and read it line by line, slower than he'd ever read anything in our marriage. He found the reason again. Active default. He read it once, then again, then he looked up and tried to find a fight in her face. There wasn't one. The loan officer reached for a pen only to initial a box on the checklist in his file, neat and small, like a librarian marking a return. My husband's eyes followed the pen automatically. It was the same kind of pen the notary had offered, the same quiet instrument that made decisions feel permanent. He didn't reach for it. He didn't reach for anything. The loan officer stood, still professional, still calm. "I'm sorry," she said, and it sounded like the kind of sorry you say when the rules are old and your job is to enforce them. "We can't proceed today." My husband stood too, a half-beat late, like he hadn't realized the meeting had ended. He held the paper in his hand, and for a second, he looked like he might tear it, like he might destroy the evidence and call it strength. But there were witnesses in the waiting room. There was a receptionist behind glass. There were cameras in the corners that didn't take sides. So he folded the paper once and stuffed it back into his folder like he could put the status away. He forced a laugh that didn't land. "This is ridiculous," he said. The loan officer didn't respond to that. She opened the door for him the way you open a door for someone carrying a box. In the waiting area, the receptionist glanced up as we walked past. My husband kept his eyes forward. His shoulders were stiff, locked, like he was trying to keep his body from confessing what his folder already held. A couple in the waiting chairs watched him for half a second, just long enough to notice the energy shift, then looked away, polite, grateful it wasn't their appointment. At the front desk, the receptionist said, "Have a good day," in the automatic tone people use when they don't want your emotions to become their problem. My husband didn't answer. Outside, the cold air hit his face and took whatever performance he had left. He didn't look at me until we reached the curb. Then, finally, he spoke like he was still trying to pull the story back into his hands. "You knew," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation he wanted to make heavier than the printout. I didn't lift my chin. I didn't smile. I didn't correct him with a speech. "I read what I signed," I said. He stared at me like I'd broken a rule. Like wives weren't supposed to be quiet and accurate at the same time. His phone buzzed again. He looked down at the screen this time, and whatever he saw made his mouth tighten. He shoved it in his pocket. "I'm going to fix it," he said, more to himself than to me. I nodded once, the way you nod at someone who's determined to run into the same wall until the wall wins. That night, in my new kitchen, I set my phone face down on the table, no buzzing under my palm. No calls I had to answer, no deadlines tied to my name. I opened the bottom drawer and slid the divorce packet inside, the same thick stack of pages that had once felt like a trap. It made a soft sound against the wood as it settled. Then I closed the drawer all the way until it clicked. In the quiet that followed, I understood what my husband still couldn't admit. He had taken everything. So the system had finally stopped asking me to carry any of it.